Mr. Scott.
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment to desk amendment number 14.
This amendment number 14, the clerk will designate the amendment and the staff will distribute copies, and then we'll proceed in just about 20 seconds.
Amendment number 14 being considered seventh on education and workforce, offered by Mr. Scott.
Okay, Mr. Scott, we yield 4 minutes for your comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, this amendment restores funding to the 2024 appropriations funding levels agreed to in the Fiscal Responsibility Act of 2023, levels that weren't even adjusted for inflation or increased population. Programs funded under Function 500 ensure that all children have an equal opportunity to an excellent education, help students afford higher education, train workers, and ensure safe and fair workplaces. Unfortunately, the proposed cuts by Republicans will decimate education funding, hurt education and job funding, and leave the country less prepared, less trained, and less competitive workforce. This budget reduces support for K-12 and early childhood education, and particularly under the Title I for Title I schools. These cuts would affect 26 million students in the Title I program and lead to over 200,000 fewer teachers in classrooms. So it would also cut support for Head Start, eliminating early childhood education access for over 51,000 children. For students enrolled in higher education, these cuts would eliminate federal work study, a program that helps 660,000 students earn work-based assistance. The underlying Republican proposal includes no increase for Pell Grants for the first time since 2012, a program that is vital to making college affordable for low-income students. This proposal also hurts students and teachers by cutting teacher training programs. Budget also denies job training and employment services by cutting WIOA, that's the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, adult job training, which would end services to nearly 300,000 adults, cuts WIOA youth job training by ending services for over 125,000 youth. These cuts will have a long-lasting impact on the skills of our students and the future of our workforce. And I reserve the balance of my time.
Thank the gentleman from Virginia, and now would ask that, open it up rather for members who might want to claim time in opposition to the amendment. The gentlelady from Michigan is yield 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I actually have to laugh at the name of this amendment from the Democrats, Protect Education. It should be called the Protect the Teachers Union and Radical Leftist Ideology. Let's talk about that. Are we suffering from amnesia from the past 3 years? Democrats, under the thumb of the teachers union, kept schools closed for far longer than needed. The effects, just look at the facts, were catastrophic. According to the Department of Education's own statistics, average scores have fallen in essentially every key metric. This all occurred under the backdrop of the nearly $190 billion, some of which remains unspent, that was appropriated under the COVID aid bills to make sure schools are safer for children and staff. Also during this time, Republicans and parents, God forbid, let's not forget about the parents, right, led the charge to keep pornography out of schools. Democrats have cried outrage at attempts to prohibit graphic novels such as Gender Queer off the shelves of school libraries. They'll cry book banning, but I bet not one Democrat on this committee would openly read this book to their children. Another great travesty for Democrats is the prohibition of allowing teachers to talk to five-year-olds about their gender ideology. God forbid we focus on reading, writing, and math. And God forbid we say a child's education shouldn't be determined by their zip code. Democrats will say they are for education while at the same time fight back against attempts at getting kids, especially low-income ones, out of failing schools. Democrats will say we're cutting funding for education, but they can't point to a provision in this bill that actually cuts funding. Why? I'll tell you why. Because there isn't a cut to education in this resolution, but that won't stop them from fear-mongering. But parents, I can assure you, are tired of it. They know who fought to keep schools closed, the Democrats. They know who fought to keep porn on the bookshelves of their children's school library, the Democrats. And who fought to continue to fight against school of choice? The Democrats. Spare me this hollow amendment. The facts are clear. Regardless of the spin, vote no on this amendment, and I yield my time.
I thank the gentlelady from Michigan. Now yield the balance of the time to Mr. Klein from Virginia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With respect to my friend, my colleague from the Commonwealth of Virginia, I oppose the amendment because we cannot afford the disastrous education policies perpetuated by this administration. Our massive government debt currently amounts to more than $98,000 per U.S. citizen and is rising, meaning that our children are already put at a disadvantage before they can even vote to stop this excessive spending. Further, this administration has used taxpayer dollars to send government mediators from the Department of Justice to interject into the affairs of local school boards when they don't like the policies that they're seeking to implement, including those in my district, the Roanoke County School Board, and push for the adoption of policies that they promote their woke agenda. This budget responds to Democrats' failed education policies by reining in the woke, wasteful, and bloated bureaucracy, and responds to this administration's unconstitutional student loan policies by protecting taxpayer dollars and ending the bailouts. I urge a no vote on the amendment with respect to the patron, and I yield back to the chairman.
I thank Representative Klein and now yield the 1 minute to the gentleman from Virginia for rebuttal or for closing comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Of course, test scores have been down. Students were out of school. But the historic economic growth and investments in education made possible by the American Rescue Plan Act, which passed without a single congressional Republican vote, provided for the necessary funding to open the schools safely and make up for lost learning. There were no specific cuts in the Republican budget, you could say, because we're only talking about spending levels, but if you come to these levels, you're going to have cuts. Now, the investments made by the Biden administration during the past 2 years led to, respectively, the first and second largest job growth years in American history. Our economy has added more than 13 million jobs since President Biden took office, and Democrats are focused on building the economy from the bottom up and the middle out. We have chronically underfunded these programs, and this amendment would just reject these cuts and at least maintain present funding. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I thank the gentleman from Virginia. The question's on agreeing to the amendment offered by Mr. Scott. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. No. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it.
Recorded vote.
As agreed to, we'll postpone the recorded vote, but grant that until later in the markup. Are there any other amendments?
Mr. Chairman.